I became a PA quite a few years ago. And about 2 years after I became a PA, I developed breast cancer. And I followed the conventional route of everything and was scared and did some crazy things that I wish I hadn't. And I'll never forget, I went to a workshop with Dr. Zava from ZRT Labs, and it was in Texas. And the room was full. There was internists, OBGYNs. I bet there was almost 400 people there. And I said to the person I was with, when I get done, I'm going to go up and talk to Dr. Zava if he isn't flooded by other people, just to talk to him about my situation. And so I went up to him, and I was probably 20 pounds heavier than what I am now. And I went up to him and I said, Dr. Zava, I told him I had hormone positive breast cancer and went into everything. And he said to me, did you do chemo? And I said, no, I didn't. And he said, go back and kiss your oncologist. And then I said to him, but I have 2 sisters that had hormone positive breast cancer also. And at that point, we weren't doing the BRCA gene at that point, because that was 22 years ago. And he said, did they look like you? And I said, yes. And he said, it's because you're high estrogen. Go home and get on progesterone. That's all that you need. And that became a journey for me. And it became a journey for me to be an advocate for other women with breast cancer, or helping them so that they did not get breast cancer, looking at our hormones and that. So that was really basically the beginning of it all. And it's really been a journey. It's been a wonderful journey. But it's met with resistance, as you know, from the conventional people. But it's when you listen to Dr. Zava, I mean, it makes so much sense, and you think about what our hormones do. I mean, why aren't we promoting more of this? So that's how I got started. That was the beginning.
Wow, that's a powerful story. Thank you for sharing that. Janet, what questions do you have for Mary?
Oh, wow. You just opened up a lot for me. So, Mary, many times Shawn and I even hear this. And in fact, just the last couple of days, we went out and we ran into a lady that did do the chemo. And I don't know if she did the radiation, but the things that these women go through. Can you just share a little bit? Because if somebody hasn't had cancer or had a patient that has went through chemo for breast cancer, they're kind of clueless to what we're talking about.
Well, I think the biggest thing is I have women come to me, after they've had breast cancer and have been treated. So I do urinary metabolites on them to look at, the downflow of their hormones. And, it's tough because we're told that we can't do any hormones for 5 years post breast cancer, right? So I try to help them, and I have them look at their diet, how are they eating? Look at supplements, doing the DIM, the things to help the estrogen follow the downstream like it should, the estrogen metabolites. We do talk about progesterone, and we talk about estriol, which I say to them, I give them studies and I let them look, and I say that it's totally up to you what you decide to do, because so many of them feel so miserable. I mean, they're totally miserable. And it's amazing what a little bit of progesterone can do. And when you think about breast cancer, if it's hormone positive, we're talking about hormone positive, and we're talking about if doing a little bit of progesterone, I always say, what are the benefits versus the risk? But they have to consider, and they have to decide what they're going to do. The other people who've gone through breast cancer and they have triple negative, all of those kind of things, or the Herceptin positive breast cancers, those people that come in and we just really look at how we can detox them, really try to help fix their gut. And look at just supplements to help them. How many of them aren't even on vitamin D with K2? I mean, very few. Few of them. So you look at their micronutrients. I'll look at micronutrients for them alone, which will help them. But so much of it truly is diet. And and it's so interesting because when you look back I look back at myself before I learned what I have learned. What did you take to people who had cancer? What did you take to them to eat? Sugar.
Sugar.
Yeah.
Treats.
Right. Yeah.
Treats. Yeah. And it's the worst thing we can do. It's the sugar is just the worst thing that we can do because it feeds on cancer cells. So I think too, opening up the eyes of people that, you need to make sure you're getting your greens, your vegetables, your proteins, and your good fats, just focusing. And I think then their sleep gets better, even just changing their diet, which is hard to do because, most of them, I hate to say it, but have sugar addictions because it's been their comfort.
Yeah,
Right.
for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I think we need to get to a point, and there's data, there's a lot of data out there now, and I truly believe that cancer is a metabolic disease.
Mm-hmm. I do too.
Yeah.
I agree
like
with
many diseases. And I
Mm-hmm.
think
I
we
agree
need to,
with you.
yeah,
It's all starts in the cellular. It's everything we have really is cellular based. And so, what are we doing to fix those
right.
things? And who talks about that? Who talks about changing? I mean, it's amazing when somebody has cancer and nobody talks to them about their diet. They tell them to go eat what they want to eat, what they can tolerate.
Right.
And then we give them chemo
Yeah.
to kill the cancer cells.
And then we're feeding the cancer cells.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But then we can't kill all the cancer cells. That's completely impossible. And any oncologist that says otherwise is lying.
Mm-hmm.
But we wipe out their immune system with the chemotherapy.
Mm-hmm.
And then we expect that the remaining cancer cells, we expect their immune system to fight those off, yet they don't have an immune system anymore. So the whole chemotherapy radiation thing, to me, it just doesn't make sense whatsoever, honestly.
Well, the interesting thing too, and I don't know, but the mammography, when you start looking at the studies that are on mammography, the benefit of mammography, I promote thermography. I love thermography.
Yeah.
If we could do breast MRIs on people, that'd be great. And ultrasounds, why are we doing mammography on women who have dense breasts? I mean, really.
Jan and I were just sharing an article with each other last night about mammography and how it's kind of a scam. It increases radiation. It has radiation. So it
and if you have a dense breast and you're pushing down on a breast, maybe if there's some abnormal cells there, what are you doing when you're pushing so hard on a breast? Are some of those cells breaking up and moving onward? We don't, there's so many things. And how many false positive mammograms do you see? I mean, there's a lot of false positives.
And then what happens, Mary, after a false positive biopsy, and they go through all this rigmarole, and
then they have what do you call it? I'm thinking about, what they put inside to be a marker in the breast. They put I'm thinking about it. I can't think about it, but they put a marker in the breast, after they do a biopsy too, so they can always see that area. That's a foreign body. There you go again.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there's so many things that we do that I don't think we sit down and we process and we really think about what are we actually doing. And the sad thing about what we put into people's heads, they're psychic by the things that we say to them.
Yes.
So you have an abnormal mammogram, we're going to continue to follow it every 6 months. And like DCIS, ductal. I mean, DCIS is 0. It's not cancer. It's 0, but they treat it as a cancer.
Yeah. Exactly. In fact, that's what happened to this lady we were talking to.
DCIS.
And so here they scared the bejesus out of her, and she went through every treatment that she was told, and now she's miserable.
Yeah.
Basically the chemotherapy, ruined her ovaries, and now she has all the side effects that you would have from being postmenopause at 37 years
she's
old.
not supposed to be able to do hormones because
exactly. So she's miserable.
Yeah. So, and so her quality of life is not good at all.
No.
So, yeah, it's and how when somebody doesn't feel good, it's hard to get them motivated to start moving, to start to change their way that they eat, because she's probably sleeping horribly. And the lack of sleep, what that does to all of us, when our cortisol is screwed up, boy, we're screwed up. I tell you a little story. So I've been waking up about 3 o'clock in the morning. So last night I thought, I'm going to check my blood sugar. My husband's a diabetic. Couldn't get his machine, and I wasn't going to wake him up to ask him how to use his machine. So I couldn't find out what my blood sugar was. But I'm sure my blood sugar is racing sometimes at night because I'm waking up at 3 and, and that's what happens to us too, so, to stay on target about that, and that's cortisol, definitely,
For
so
sure.
here we
Yeah.
are. So, and as we get older, our insulin, our pancreas doesn't work as well. And so that all those factors, and I just think, how many people check insulin levels on people, fasting insulin levels, so your hemoglobin A1C is great, but your fasting blood sugar is 109. Oh, wow. But what's your fasting insulin level? And
It's
do
so
we
much
do
more.
that?
Yeah,
There's
so
so
much
much
more
more to
important.
the picture. And the
Yeah.
sad thing is, if you're Medicare, insurance isn't going to pay for that. So, and it's just, we're in such a system that we look at what's insurance going to pay for. And that's not good medicine.
No.
That's not good medicine. We have to start looking at it, investments in our health. We have
Correct.
to invest in our health, just like we invest in something else. Well, if you don't invest in your health, what do you have?
Exactly.
And sometimes it's kind of late to start investing. The thing that I think is great, I have 3 kids, and my kids are 50, 52, 50, and 47. And they all are very...
Now, how can you, at the age of 39, have 52-year-old kids?
That's right. But my kids are very much... I got married at 14.
There you go.
but my kids are very much into their health, and they exercise. So it was so interesting. We were in Des Moines this weekend, and my son, their kids they're high school kids, and they eat so healthy. And I'm like, they don't have any junk in their house. They have no dyes. And I'm like, you are so good, but I love that. And I think I've done some of it, but I haven't done it all. I know they even got rid of their air fryer because it wasn't stainless steel. Now that's pretty darn good. They got all new pots and pans because they weren't stainless steel. So, I think people are listening to other people that have knowledge and good knowledge. We're not just going by what mainstream is saying, and isn't that great?
It is great. And it's also a reminder that these things are generational. As parents, we teach our kids.
You're absolutely right.
My youngest son just celebrated his 23rd birthday, and he wanted wooden spoons for his birthday because they don't want to use plastic.
Yeah. Isn't that great?
It is,
and for them to have that, to even care at that age, to even care, and to look at supplements. So, my son will send me podcasts. He'll go, Mom, you got to listen to this one. And then I send him podcasts. So I think it's refreshing to me that we're seeing this happen. And I think we have to continue to promote that, but I love it to hear young people talk about it in their groups if they're around. That's great.
I agree. And I think this whole health movement, with the election last year in the White House, there's a lot of talk about, MAHA and a lot of talk about the government starting to make standards to make us healthier. But honestly, Mary, it's got to come from the bottom up.
Yeah.
From people like you and I educating.
We need the support from them. We need the support, but we're the ones who have to push it among our people. We have to be the advocates for other people. And I always say that, when I see patients, I can take you to the water, the horse. I can take your horse to the water, but I can't make you drink it. But I can help you get there. But you have to do all the work. And the tough thing about it, to be healthy, is work. It's work. It is work. But it's a wonderful work. But it's and when they see the rewards of that work, it won't be work to them anymore. But I always see, if you can make it for the first 30 days, you've got it made. 30 days. And then you're going to feel better. You're going to notice all the changes in yourself. And then you're going to go, hey, I want to continue. I want to continue on this journey. But it's a good 30 days. I always say to people, don't think you're going to feel better in 2 weeks, because you're just starting to detox. You're just starting to go on your journey. But 1 month leads to 2 months, leads to 3 months. Right. But always remember, if you go downhill again, you got to go back uphill again, because we can go downhill pretty easy, depending upon, what goes on in our lives. So, but it's always a challenge.
I feel like what you're describing, though, is liberation. Like, we're liberated. Once we start that process and get to the place where we start feeling well, then we have our life back.
Yeah.
And you're thriving. You're just not existing anymore.
You are absolutely right. You know, I think about my women that do hormones, and I think about how many women will say to me, "You saved my life, but you saved my marriage."
Right.
We hear it every week, maybe every day.
Isn't
It's
that
so
amazing?
rewarding. Yep.
And how many women are so happy when men start using testosterone?
Yep.
Because they get their husbands back.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You know, and things that, you know, like my women come in and they've seen their OBGYN and they say, well, women don't need testosterone, or they take their supplements, which are good supplements. I just had a gal the other day and they threw them across the room and said, you don't need these. You can get these all from food. And so these people come in and my heart just goes out to them because they're beat up. You know, they're actually, because, you know, we're kind of still in this thing where we have people that we listen to certain people, you know, and we respect them. Well, that leads to another whole new dilemma for this person that they thought really had helped them for quite a few years of their life, and now are just throwing them kind of down the drain. It's tough, isn't it? But so I just, people get so many mixed messages. And so we have to be there with a message that empowers them too. And I think that's very important for what we do with functional medicine. We have to empower people.
I agree. That's really what it all comes down to. In fact, that's one of the reasons we started this podcast, is to educate and empower individuals to take charge of their own health. As healthcare professionals, we can help teach them, but you know, how much time do we spend in a month with them? You know, an hour, maybe 2 hours. They need to do it.
Thank God you do that. Thank God that you do that, and that there's people like you out there that do that. Because I hate to tell some stories, but you know, I had a lady that I don't know if I dare talk about this, but I will. So she was doing the big C word, and she had like 6 of them, and she told her pharmacist that after the last 2, she was in bed like for 2 weeks. So I said, well, did you talk to your pharmacist about it? And you know what the response was? Take ibuprofen before you get your next one.
Oh, yes.
Now we got to think that if a shot is making us that sick, can it be good for us?
And that's what we had a discussion. I said, did you ever think that maybe that was making you sick rather than making you well? And then she started to tell me about other people who had done it, and they, you know, had COVID how many times, you know, and had 7 shots. So, I mean, it's just, so it's actually, so, but the problem I see so many times is how many people are willing to sit down with these people and have a discussion, just a very civil discussion, and ask them questions, and they can ask me questions. And I say, you have a right to disagree with me. You know, just like I can disagree with you, and we're going to respect one another. But I think that's what we have to do. We have to be open to people and be gentle and loving with how we do things. And that's important too. That's very important.
I agree. And give and ultimately educate people and give them a choice. That's really what's important.
So I will share this with you, Mary, and I might have in person, but I have many women that will come in, and especially we started off with cancer survivors, and they are put on estrogen blockers. And they feel even worse, right? And they'll say, I filled the prescription, but I'm not taking it anymore. And I keep refilling it. I'm like, okay. But if I stop filling it, I'm going to lose my oncologist. And what a sad thing that they are so programmed that they're in fear, that they have judgment they're going to get kicked out the door if they don't do exactly everything that they were told to do. And that is kind of where we are in medicine. That's where we are today in the healthcare system, that, you know, we are kind of warlords over people rather than having an honest discussion about what we can tolerate and what's not working. And
Well,
you
and
know,
you have choices, and you have choices.
right.
Right.
And so
Right.
you have to have knowledge about these choices, and you don't need to make a choice in 24 hours. That's
Correct.
one of the things that bothers me too, is when we put the fear of God of people when they get cancer, and we say, you've got to do it right away, because if you don't, you're going to die. We know that cancer cells are there for at least 10 years, right?
Yeah.
And so,
Exactly.
so you got to do something within the next 2 weeks, so you don't have time to process it. And whenever we react out of fear, many times we don't make the right decisions. And we all know
Irrational.
that. We are
Right.
very irrational with what we do. When you're talking about the estrogen blockers, when I had breast cancer, they put me on Arimidex, and I had been on it from probably August. And I remember right before Christmas, I said to my husband, I don't really care about Christmas. And that was not me. I don't really care about decorating. I don't care about anything. And all of a sudden I thought, I think that drug is making me feel depressed. I think I'm getting depressed. So I stopped it. And it was like in a week, I was like a new person. And I was like, I'm not going back. But I went in and I saw my oncologist. He's a wonderful man. He had a son who had committed suicide. So he had a lot of empathy.
Yeah.
And he said to me, Mary, it's not worth it. Stop it. The benefit versus the risk of taking that is not good for you. Just get off of it. And
Your oncologist told you that.
Wow.
Mhm, mhm.
But
I've
he was
always
listening to you.
I always respected that man so much. Yeah, he listened to me, but he was also a man of God. I mean, he was and I think about that, and I think he could have said to me, well, Mary, I wouldn't stop it because, but he just said, the benefits versus the risk. I wouldn't stay on it either. Not if you feel like that. It's not good to feel depressed. And he didn't recommend another estrogen blocker for me, which I was very happy for. But so it's sometimes you find some that are very good, and other times, yes. And it's sad because what happened in our medical community that we're not willing to discuss our options.
Well, and when Jen and I talk to people about hormones, mostly because that's what we talk about, we're honest with them. We're like, you know what? Please do your own research. Don't trust us.
Yes.
Do your own research. This is what we believe, and the studies back this up. But please do your own research. And I always tell patients that if you go to a doctor and they don't want you to do any research, and they say this is the way it is, or nothing, then don't go to that doctor.
Run out the door.
Yeah, exactly. Run as fast as you can. You want somebody that's going to help you along the journey and help educate you, and want you to do research about whatever.
And why would you do this, or why would you not do this? It's kind of like when we talk to people about oral estrogen. Why wouldn't you do oral estrogen? What just blows my mind is because I have some women who come in, and they're on Premarin. And I'll say, you can put it in intravaginally. That's not an issue. You can use it intravaginally. But why in the hell do they have to use red dye? What are we doing? Why are we using dyes? Does it make sense?
I mean, on the same subject, Mary, prometrium.
Yeah.
Why does prometrium use peanut oil?
Yeah, you're
peanut
right.
Oil.
Yeah.
It's like drug companies just don't get it.
Well, and some of the prometrium has colors on it too now, if you know.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
So, and I'm like, what, so it's like, well, guess we can't do that. I'm not going to have you put red dye in your vagina.
Right.
That's not a good thing. Dyes are not good for us. But yeah, it's crazy. It's just, yeah.
So, to change the subject slightly, I have conversations with women about hysterectomies. And one of the things that I see that happens is that there may not be any problem. It's just that we're giving them the sales pitch just in case. You'll have a peace of mind. So can you speak to a little bit about what women go through after hysterectomies? Because I feel like that's not shared openly and honestly as it should be.
Well, the interesting thing is, when you have a hysterectomy, they're told to keep their ovaries many times because then their hormones will stay good. And it'll be at least 5 years. And so they come in and it's a year later.
Right.
And they're very symptomatic.
Right.
And they say, but they tell me my ovaries are working well. And all I do is I go, so think about it. You took the biggest blood supply away from your ovaries, and they're going to keep functioning really well for 5 years?
Good point.
I don't think so. And that's really, really sad, because here now they're like, well, they didn't tell me that that would be an issue for at least 5 years. So to sit down with women and talk about why would you do a hysterectomy? So many of them too go in, and it's because they're having heavy periods.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we can fix your heavy periods by adjusting your hormones with natural hormones.
Right.
Do you want to give that a try instead? Well, that's never been offered to them because they're told they need to be on birth control. That's because birth control. Interesting, when I first started being in medicine many years ago, if you were a smoker, you had to quit birth control at age 35 because of the risk for clots.
I remember that now. Yeah. Right.
And at 8, you could stay on them till 40 if you were a smoker. Then after that, done. No more. Now, guess what?
50, 55 years old on birth control.
It's just continue.
Right.
And so these women, and talking about history, I'm kind of getting off track, but talking about that, they don't even know where their hormones are at. They have no idea what's going on because they're not getting periods, but they don't know and they feel miserable.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so why are you taking it? What's the benefit of this? Well, they really don't know. They just have been told to stay on it because, they had heavy periods or they had painful periods or whatever. So they just have continued to stay on it. So that's another thing. So they're offered that. And if then that doesn't work, then, well, maybe then you want to do a hysterectomy because you've got, the bleeding, all the bleeding issues. There's so many issues with hysterectomies too. So, and then a lot of my women, they get a hysterectomy, but they're told to save their ovaries. And then guess what? Then they have problems with their ovaries 2 to 3 years later. And then they have to go back in and remove those. So, it's just keep asking me questions because it's just kind of like,
and not to mention when they take out the uterus, there's a void the size of your fist in your body. And then things start, like your bladder, start falling apart or falling out.
Well, or not only that, when you remove that, there's a lot of scar tissue and things don't expand like they did. And so then now you're having problems with being intimate, and it just works into lots of issues, just many, many issues. And then the bad thing is they're told that, if you do hormones, all you need is estrogen because you don't have a uterus. So you don't have to worry about ovarian cancer, and you don't have to worry about uterine cancer. Sorry. So the messages they hear are so mixed. And then they find people like us. And then you got to kind of start from scratch and explain to them why and what. And then this person gets back to be feeling really good and they're so thankful. But their journey isn't the best journey in the world, So, yeah, why I'm just mixed, with that whole mess. It's what we promote a lot of surgeries that do we really need?
Right. And I feel like too, Mary, that we would never tell Shawn, hey, we're going to take out your body parts, right? If he needs, right? But women, we do, and we trust what we're being told. And one thing that I'm going to throw my mom out there. She was a nurse and she followed everything her physicians told because she was used to taking orders. And I understand that. And they were great. They gave her Premarin and they put her on a mesh, but they took the Premarin away after 5 years. And now my mom's 88 going on 89 and she can't have any more replacement of those meshes. So because her tissue is so fragile, right? So now she gets stuck with a catheter. And you know what happens to us when we no longer have the mobility and we're taking a bag with us when we're going places, you stop going out, right?
And what
Because
happens? Yeah. And then what happens to us is we age and we have to be in our homes and that can't leave. What happens? It's really the death. It's the death cycle. I hate to say that, but it is the death cycle. It truly is, because there's no motivation left. You just give up, basically.
You totally lose your independence.
Yeah. And that's what we see. So, one of the things I always say is, if you're so content just sitting at home and doing nothing, that's going to cause you problems. You're going to be in trouble.
Absolutely.
You have to move. You have to get out. You got to be social. You've got to get, and you see that happening to elderly people. And that it's so sad. It's so sad. Well, and I think talking about what's going on too, you think about people that are on like 10 different medications. Meds are studied. One med is studied.
Yep.
Right.
So how many meds are studied that if you're on losartan, you're on statin, you're on a pain medication, how do those all interact in your body?
We don't know.
We don't know. So what happens to these people, and what are we doing to them? So, and that bothers me too, because we don't know all the interactions. Like one drug does this, one does this, one. So here we are doing that multi-pharmacy.
Yeah. And if they're on that many medications and they have a doctor or a healthcare professional that has not addressed their diet, then they need to get a new doctor. I mean, seriously, because all the things that you just mentioned, losartan and high cholesterol, all that stuff, it's a metabolic problem. I mean, you can fix that stuff with diet. You don't need drugs. We don't lack a drug. Our body's designed pretty well.
Fix itself.
Yeah, right.
We do a big blood test, and it's so interesting. And people get scared when we start going over it. And I go, no, remember, everything on these papers you can fix. And you know how you fix it? With changing your eating habits, getting supplements, and exercising.
Yeah. And
that's
sleep.
All you need.
Don't forget about sleep.
And sleep. Important. Oh yeah, sleep. I'm sorry. Sleep is vital. Yes. Yes, you're right. Thank you.
But it is.
But isn't that amazing? It's amazing how we can repair ourselves. But like I said, it's work.
Yes.
But we as functional people, we have to be the cheerleader.
Yeah.
We got to be the cheerleader at all times, because as we all know, and I know, I fall down,
Sure.
God, sometimes I want to go have ice cream. I'm going to go get it. I don't care, but I don't feel good for about 3 days afterwards.
Yeah.
But it's just, we have to do those things because we just can't live perfectly all the time. It just doesn't go, but we know how much better we feel when we do things in the correct way, in the right way. But it's learning how to do it. And, and isn't it interesting? Like you think about Mazola oil, like, when you look at the oils that we were told were good.
Yeah.
And we were told that beef tallow was bad.
Right.
And now look,
or lard.
Lard.
Bacon
my
fat.
mom did everything with lard. Bacon grease. We did it all. That's all we ever had at our house. And we didn't have any issues. Isn't it amazing? Right. And then, and then we brought all this other stuff into our world. So I have to tell you, so I had a gal who had watched a podcast, and she was doing sesame seed oil on her face. And we checked her omegas. Oh my God. And her bad. It was like in the 1300s. And I'm like, girl, what are you doing? How do you cook? And then she looked at me and she said, Mary, because I asked her about the different oils, and she goes, I've been using sesame seed oil on my face for about a month. She was absorbing it. Isn't that amazing? So, we don't think about the process of what we put on our skin. Goes inside of us, and we just don't think about that, do we? Right. Isn't it? I mean, and she was just mortified. She just felt like, she said, I feel so stupid. And I said, well, you wouldn't think about that. Right. We don't. So it's just, we're learning all the time. We're always learning. I learn a lot all the time too. The other thing I learned the other day, I was listening, porcine. So the thyroid meds, the porcine, if somebody's got Hashimoto's, the porcine, could that can elevate their antibodies?
Yeah. Because
I did not know that. I learned that the other day.
Natural to pigs, not to humans. So
yes.
It causes an inflammatory response.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Which I didn't process that. that. Yeah.
So that's what I started on because I do have
Yeah.
Hashimoto's, and I'm not on that anymore. We
Yeah.
make our own.
So you
But I
compound.
also, yeah, so sometimes I have to adjust,
Yeah.
which is almost impossible with the porcine too.
Okay,
You can't adjust like you need to.
No.
And there's always that time where I'm like, I start feeling, oh, I gotta,
You gotta check it. Yeah.
And right. And so
Compounding thyroid medication is the best thing that ever happened. It's really a good thing. It's to me, because you cannot get it with anything commercial. You can't get what you need because most people need less T4 and more T3.
Right.
Exactly. It allows us to change that ratio, and it's bioidentical hormone instead from a pig. So and we can make it, and we can make sustained release T3. T3 has a short half-life, so we can make it last longer. So
makes it great. Yeah, we're really going on a lot of different. I
love it. I love it. That's why we had you on, Mary, because we knew it would be easy conversation. We knew we'd have to cut it short and probably have you back on again.
Yeah.
So, tell us, Mary. Tell us about, if anybody has any questions, tell us about your website and how people can get a hold of you.
They can call. There's a number, I think, isn't there? I think there's a number. They can get a hold of me. I do telehealth. I do telehealth. And that's how they would get a hold of me. They would, that's the way, I guess, that I would tell you.
Okay. So Accelerate My Wellness is your website, acceleratemywellness.com.
Yeah.
And there's that beautiful picture of you up there.
Yeah. What do they photo? How do they do that? They go in there and they photo. I don't know. They do things with it. They make me a lot better looking than what I really am.
Beautiful.
Mary, you look great. You look great. You're amazing.
Thank you. Well, I will tell you this. Yeah. Should I share this? I'm 76 years old.
You what?
I'm 76 years old.
I know. I knew that.
And that's it. It's
incredible. And I will tell you, when I think of you, I think of my wife, because you're both Midwestern women.
Yeah.
And
tough women.
Yeah, right. And you guys live to be 100. I mean, that's
I would love to maintain everything that I have now. Would that be wonderful? And who knows what's going to happen in the future? None of us know. With the movement and people just getting smarter and finding out new things, and we're just improving all these things. Who knows what's ahead of us? And I always say, God's in charge. He'll lead us in the right direction. He'll lead us. We just need to follow. We just need to follow, right?
That's absolutely right. That's absolutely right.
Thank you.
Well, Mary, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being on.
Thank you.
We really appreciate your wisdom and knowledge.
It's a privilege.
We really love working with you. So thank you so much for everything you do, including for your patients. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You take care. Bye-bye.
And listeners and viewers, thank you for tuning in to Health Solutions with Shawn and Janet Needham. Tune in Monday to our regularly scheduled podcast, 12:30 to 1:30 Pacific Standard Time. Thank you.